Welcome to another episode of High Ticket Woman. I'm Debbie Cottle, your host. And today I have with me Natalie Lamb. Natalie is a life, relationship, and grief coach. I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about that. And she's been doing this for 27 years. She's also the author of 2 published books in her series titled The Wisdom Chronicles. Those 2 books are called Open Your Eyes and What I Want You to Know. She's also created 2 digital courses called Uniquely Yours, Creating Your Marriage Your Way, and the second one, How to Be a Better Human. That sounds like something we all need to be taking. She says, I love to speak about all things human and help my clients embrace the vulnerabilities of being human with grace and ease. And having been intimately touched by grief herself, she likes to help people see grief as a friend that needs to be embraced. She believes her life's mission is to help others choose freedom, purpose, and love. Natalie, welcome to High Ticket Woman.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I went on your website and there's more about you than you share in your biography. And so I want to start here because I'm super curious about this. You also um, have in the past, I don't know if you still do it, but you teach preventative classes and seminars around teaching the public about dangerous people like sexual predators and just creating awareness for people about sex trafficking and the kinds of men and women that do horrible things like that. I'm super curious about how you what brought you to that place in your life that you decided I want to learn about this and I want to instruct other people about this.
Well, I started with my first passion when I first graduated from college was actually to deal with children that were in abusive situations. One of my last courses, I saw this video of a family who had the parents were very abusive and ended up killing the child. But then it kind of went into the parents, right? It was like gruesome, but it went into the parents and started talking about the parents' lives. And from there, after I graduated, I went and got certified to teach parenting classes. Because I figured if I only deal with the child and then send them back to a parent, then the child is
Yeah.
not really being helped, right? Now they got a reprieve for what, an hour or so, but then they're living with harmful people. So I said, well, let me get to the parents. Let me start teaching parents how to be better parents so that we can prevent the children from ever having to see a person like myself, right? And so from
Yeah.
there, I started also got certified to teach like personal development classes and that kind of thing. Excuse me. And so then I started teaching marriage courses. And in my premarital course that I designed, I realized this one year, every couple, one or both of them had been sexually abused. And that was alarming to me because you hear the stats, from a book stance, but it's very
Yeah.
different to see people in front of you who have been affected. And it's like, every one of you, like, this is really, really insane. So I said, well, let me see what I can do to try to prevent it because I see the harms that come. I see how it affects people individually and then also how it affects a marriage, right? And so from there, I said, well, let me study it and see what I can do because I wasn't really I knew a little bit, but not a lot about the subject. And so I just started researching it. And what I found when I started researching was that a lot of the information at the time was really talking about teaching kids how to protect themselves. So we have stranger danger, we have, these parts of your body don't let anybody touch. If somebody does something, to you, tell me. But there wasn't a lot of information to tell parents who to be weary of. And so that's where my focus began was let me teach parents about who these predators are so that they can see them before they come. And what I realized was that for a lot of them, most sexual abusers, for children especially, are groomers and they set it up. They're not quick. They're not grabbers, is what we call them, the ones that just grab somebody off the street but that's the ones we're most afraid of, right? We're most afraid of me walking down the alley and somebody grabbing me, or my kid going to school and somebody taking them. What we know is about 90% of children that are sexually abused is by someone we know and love and trust. That's a huge number, right? So I'm like, let me show you who your uncle, your brother, your aunt, and your cousin is, and the coach and the teacher that you trust, so that you can be heightened about what they do, because they actually groomed the parent first before they groomed the child.
Really?
Yes, because they had to get access. How do you get access to a child? Is the parent guard has to be lowered to allow you to get access to the children. And so when I am looking around and willing to question everyone, then being shamed. So once I started, and this stuff took me a long time to digest
Yeah.
because it was so gruesome. It's so horrific. I really studied it from the predator's angle. So I studied them. I went into their blogs, which I said, dang, I shouldn't have done that. But I ended up going in reading.
Going into the
who
mind
they
of a
are.
psychopath. That's
Yeah. So going into their mind is the only way you can really understand their angles. And I had to put it down a lot of times. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. And so I've been teaching that to parents for probably over 10 years. Unfortunately, what I have found is not a lot of parents show up. And that has been the biggest challenge, is to get parents in the room. Because once they're in the room, then they're like, I didn't know it was like this. Instead of getting them once it's happened, and now I'm trying to help them heal from it, because that's a different angle, right?
yeah.
But with studying the
Preventative
sexual
stuff.
court,
Yeah.
the preventative
Yeah.
stuff, we don't like preventive so much in this, day and age. We like to just wait for it to happen, and then we're like, oh, save me. But the preventive is the power, if people can understand that. So from there, I started. So you got sexual dangerous men, but then I started looking into dangerous men, in and of themselves. And then that's where I started teaching the dangerous man courses. I also have a dangerous woman, but I had never had any men sign up to learn about dangerous women. I've had a lot of women sign up to learn about dangerous men, right? But not as many men to sign up, because there's a lot of dangerous women as well. We
There
focus
are,
on,
yes.
there's a lot of dangerous women out there. So I like to be very, equal in whom I'm coming after, because I want all of us to be protected. So when I started teaching the dangerous man, I read up behind Sandra Brown, who was like the leading expert on pathological love relationships, and really dug into her material. And then that's where I started really teaching other women in particular about who dangerous men are. It's 8 of them I teach about for them to be able to see. We sometimes just think of the physical violence. We don't think of the sexual violence, the financial abuse, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse, and the spiritual abuse. So I try to teach on all of them, because no one's going to come from all of them, right? We're going to hit some of them. No, your very worst ones will hit all of it, but we tend not to. But what I learned from that is really that once you start, and this is why I like to get to children and teach parents, because if we can prevent them from starting their dating career, who's going to call it that, without choosing these kind of men, because the amount of violence that are in teenage relationships is staggering.
Oh, yeah.
And so if we can prevent it from the teenage, then we prevent it in the adults. Because once you start on a line of dangerous men, you tend to have many dangerous relationships. The guy may look different, but dangerous nonetheless, right? And so that's where that, again, preventive education comes in, because you want people to understand what you have to look for. I also teach it to teenagers. I have a teenage course that I teach male and female about the different types of abuses, for them to learn consent, for them to learn how to behave properly, for them to know how to use wisdom and their intuition and all of that, because no one talks about this in school, right? We go and get,
Right.
52 courses on history and all of this, and not against history, but we don't talk about the things that really affect our lives. And we need
Yeah.
to have an education, but who's giving it? You know, and how do you get people to realize that these are the things you really need to invest in to protect your life? Um, so then from there, everything keeps going. From there, I started studying personality disorders. And I created a course called The Disturbed, where I teach the public in very layman terms about personality disorders, because what we know is they are the ones that tend to cause us the most harm in our lives. They upset our lives.
Absolutely.
Right? And now everyone talks about narcissism, and everyone's labeled a narcissist. Well, not everyone is,
Yeah.
but there's 10 or 12 different personality disorders that can harm you, and we don't hone into all of them. So I try to I teach all of them so that you can say, okay, this is in my life. This is what I have to guard against. And then standing on this line, which becomes very difficult when there's people that we love, is that they're not gonna really change. Now, how do I pivot around a person that's not changing? That this disorder they have, they are disordered, and that means that it is often unfixable. Manageable for some of them have a better rate of being able to be manageable, but not fixable. And that's a different thing to digest around the life. So, from a film to a parenting class to premarital courses to all of that created
It's quite a journey.
of
Yeah.
education. It's quite a journey.
Yeah. So it started off for you in terms of like, you know, working with kids and then wanting to educate parents, but it's really sort of morphed into a much broader series of, you know, seminars and classes that you teach. And, I know we've got female listeners on here going, okay, well, I want to know what those 8 types of dangerous men are, because the reality is that whether a woman is, is a mom and has children and wants the information for that reason, or she's dating men like this, or she's married to a man like this is so relevant, right?
Yeah.
Now, and what you said about personality disorders is really interesting, because what people don't often understand about personality disorders, um they are very difficult to treat, partly because they don't go to therapy. Very rarely do I, in my practice of over 30 years, do I see somebody show up for therapy who has a personality disorder. More often than not, what I see is the spouse or the adult child of someone with a personality disorder is coming to therapy. And there are certain types of personality disorders that I often say, when you live with somebody who has that type of personality disorder, it's like living with a tornado. It is absolutely chaotic. It's like it's like being spun around and you don't know if you're coming or going. It is absolutely chaotic. So I would love to pick your brain about like what you see if we focus just even on like dating relationships or marital relationships. What do you typically see for like in terms of like predators and what they're looking for? Predators don't just groom children. They can groom, as you said, they can groom parents, which means they can groom adults. What should women be aware of? What types of predator behavior are we looking for?
So if we're looking in terms of like, let's move it to like dating, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And so you can kind of not get involved with them. You want to look for someone, and this is, it's broad, but we can hone in on it as we keep talking. One thing that you want to pay attention to is the speed that they're trying to get to you. If someone is
Yes.
right, we have to remember that intensity does not equal intimacy. And so sometimes when someone's moving really fast because they need you to move fast so that you're not paying attention, They need your feet not on the ground so that you're spinning in their air that they need to be able to manipulate you in. So speed is one thing. The trouble with that is that if we look at movies, right, in our fantasy relationships, we want to be swept off our feet. We want it to be a quick romance, and he sees me and he knows everything about me, and this just feels
He
so
sees
good.
me across the room and he just knows. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's a key that when you're not firmly planted, then this is when you have to caution yourself and say, slow down. Slow down so that you can see. Slow down so that you can hear. I also always teach him, listen more than you talk, especially in the beginning. Sometimes we jump in and we can have logorrhea, right? We're just talking, talking, talking. We're telling him the kind of guy we want, the kind of romance we want, how we want to be treated, what everything the other guy did. All you're giving him is a manuscript of how to become the guy that you said you're looking for. You don't know if he's really that guy, but he knows how to be that guy because you've already given him all the information. Sit back,
Right on. Yeah.
throw a little thing out, you know? This is where the patience comes in and slowing it down because you need to be able to hear and then to bring up some of the points that you just heard in a conversation 2 or 3 times later and say, does it match? This is your life, right? And who we date and who we marry literally changes the focus of our lives. It changes our destiny for the
Absolutely.
good or for the bad, right? So I have to step into this. And even if I'm a casual dater and I'm just, dating for fun, I'm not trying to settle down, you still are bringing people into your world. So you want to be cautious about that. Now, the difficulty becomes a lot of these dating apps that I'm meeting perfect strangers that no one else knows and knows nothing about, right? The tentacles of their life. So I'm coming in trusting everything they tell me to be true. That's what gonna get you in trouble because you don't know if everything they told you is truth. Now, once you start talking and you start going out, now you have to have your observation eyes and ears on instead of love bomb me and make me feel good and tell me that I'm lovely and beautiful and I'm worth it. You have to go kind of in this space of let me see if you're safe. And I think we don't talk about safety enough in our relationships, be it romantically or platonically. The safety issue is a big one, right? It's the one that is every
Yeah, you talked about
so
that
that's
love bombing and yeah, and I hear this a lot from well, I actually heard it from men too, but you hear it a lot from women, right? That men will love bomb them. And this is a term I've only sort of become familiar with in the last 2 or 3 years. It's sort of swept, across the dating world and now it's used extensively. But there's a certain I think a lot of women know, like, why are you saying you love me? You haven't barely even met me. But there's a certain kind of woman that is really susceptible to that. So, obviously, we can focus on the kind of men who prey on that, but what is it about women who are so, like, drawn in by that? I think we need to focus on that too.
absolutely. And so I teach in my Dangerous Man course, I teach a huge part about women, who they are,
Right.
right? You are, let's say, for each eight different dangerous men, I teach why you are that woman that they go for. And so this gives you the red flags, not just about him, about yourself. Because we do have to look at ourselves and say, especially when I've been in a few dangerous relationships, right? I have to step back and say, I'm the constant in all of these relationships. What is
Yeah.
it about me that I have to look into to say, why am I choosing this? And why am I being chosen? Right? Because that's two different angles. Me
Yes.
choosing and then them choosing me. And what we know is about a lot of them, it's not always the weak, insecure, vulnerable woman that they go after. For yeah, for a huge amount of them. And this is a lot of Sandra Brown's work, right? She saw that I think it was forgive me on the statistic, but it's either 67% or 77% were really accomplished women, great careers, decent families, doing well, but they had these traits, right? Very, and I don't want to mess up all her work, but I'm gonna use my own terms. But they were women that were very tolerable, right? They had high empathy, and it almost to a huge degree. They were able to be very manageable. And so in these traits, which are great traits, right? They're not the awful traits.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be tolerable, right? To be empathetic, to be able to be very flexible is a good thing. But if you have it in a high level, then you're flexible too much. You're tolerating too many things, right? Empathy, as we know, can be an Achilles heel if it's overused, especially with people that mean us harm. So it is going in and saying, okay, what is it about me that brings this to me? What do I need to strengthen in me so that I don't fall prey to it? And but a lot of it comes from being educated on their methods because their methods are subtle. They are good at what they do. And right, that's the part we have to be able to
Yeah.
study back. They are good. They've been doing it for a very long time, and with each person, they learn new traits. They learn new ways to add to their toolbox. They're like, oh, that kind of woman, let me add this because this is the way I can manipulate her. So how do we fight up against something that is a well-oiled machine? And a lot of these men are well-oiled machines. The interesting thing is that so the first couple of dangerous men, I have the clinger and the one who is like parentified, right? So those two look not dangerous. Um, they want to be next to you. They want to support
You
you.
said the clinger and what was the second one? The clinger and the
And the one who wants to be parented.
oh, parented. Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and they look a lot the same, but they're very different because the clinker just is the one. If you were with someone that was emotionally unavailable, this clinger looks beautiful because he wants to be next to you. He's calling you.
Like to
He
spend
doesn't
all his
mind
time with
texting
you.
you. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's like let us be, attached at the hip. Everywhere you go, I'll go. You want to go get your nails done, I'm coming with you. You want to go out with your girlfriends. Hey, I'll sit there and have conversations with them. You have children. I'll help take care of the kids. What happens though is this person, though beautiful in the beginning, drains the life out of you because they don't know how
That's
to live
exhausting.
outside of you. It's exhausting. And so
Yeah.
that guy may not give off signs of dangerousness, right? And in the beginning, all your girlfriends are seeing him and they're like, he looks like a good guy. Look how he did to you. And
Yeah.
all of that. So
Yeah.
you realize you have no idea how I can't breathe. You have no idea how I feel like I'm
Yeah.
being suffocated. And so
Yeah.
sometimes women won't walk away from that because you think, wow, well, he is kind of a good guy, but this is too much. But when you're being suffocated, that means you can't breathe. That means that's taking life out of you. That means you need to walk away. With the one that needs to be parented, he is like a little boy. But if you're a woman that loves control, who likes to be the one who dictates everything, who where vulnerability is frightening for you, that guy looks good because you call all the shots. He's not bothered by you having a decent career, right? He's okay with you telling him what to do. He'll play with the kids, right? He'll be the one on the video games with the kids all night. You're like, oh wow, keep them. He'll make them, lunch. He'll be that guy, but he'll never be the man that you need him to be. He's never, even if he's working, he's never gonna pursue higher. He's always gonna stay at the same level. And Always.
He's gonna be dependent.
Very
Yeah,
dependent,
very
right?
dependent,
And
yeah.
so those are the things that those guys we tend not to really be alarmed about. We're like, how do I say this? How do I say you're just suffocating me and this is why I have to go when you have somebody else that's saying, oh, he's beating me? Well, you compare and you'll say, he's not that bad. But we don't live in comparison because comparisons is the thing that kills us, right? Comparison is violence to yourself. So when you start being comparative, you always put yourself in a bad situation because yes, as we know, there's always something worse, right?
So, so
It's
true.
always something worse. I always use
So
the
true.
analogy.
What we say to ourselves is what we say to ourselves is, "At least my situation isn't as bad as so and so situation. I can tolerate this because at least he's not doing this to me," right? Yeah.
Yes. And so when you know you have to start doing that in your own head, when you start doing your own mental gymnastics, right? And you're flipping and twirling and all of that, that's an indication to you something is not right and your intuition knows it. Like it knows it. So you have to learn how to pay
Yeah.
attention to that, even if everyone else thinks you're crazy. Because it's your life and no one's walking in your shoes and no one really knows the extent of everything but you and that person. you know? And then we go to the higher ones that are, the emotionally unavailable, the addict, the mentally ill, the physical predator, all of them, heighten the dangerousness that you jump into. But what we know is that most guys are combo men. So they're a combination of all of these. And they have, little parts of them that looks like each one. So you're trying to decipher what is this? And so if I'm not stepping back for a moment and really looking at myself and really looking at my history, because one of the things I do is I have women do a family history of all the women that are in their lives and who has had dangerous men. And it's always interesting to see the family tree because you see that a lot of them have dangerous men all around them. It was the uncle and the grandfather and a cousin. And so you get used to and normalize these dangerous behaviors that women tolerate. And so when you step into yours, you're like, no, that's what everyone else has done in my family. It seems normal. Yeah.
That's really true. And the other thing too, I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm filtering everything you're saying through my own life. And I think the 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 word dangerous needs to be in quotes because we tend to think of dangerous often as like violent, like they're
Yes.
going to do me physical harm. But what you're really saying is danger comes in a lot of different ways. Be a man or a woman can be dangerous to our well-being, our spiritual well-being, our mental, our emotional, and our physical well-being. And we tend to only focus on the physical well-being, but the others are just as critical and in some ways even more critical. But, and this is why at times women it's easy for us to judge on the outside looking into a domestically violent situation. Why does a woman stay? Well, bones and bruises heal, but the spiritual and mental and emotional damage that comes from a toxic, dangerous relationship, it does that damage goes, from a biblical perspective from passed down from generation to the next generation to the next generation, which is what you're saying. So yeah, danger isn't just about violence. I mean, that this is so, I think, so critical for women to hear.
Absolutely. And that's why, I always say, look at the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, the physical, the financial, right? Like all of those aspects, you can be in danger and you need to be able to label it properly. One thing we always discuss is how we relabel. So relabeling is something that everyone does that's been in a dangerous relationship. You have to reframe and relabel the behavior in order for you to stay. So once you've relabeled it and called it something other than what it is, you have reframed the why around it. You can give yourself permission to be there. But when I realized that I have to call it what it is, and the honesty aspect is a really hard aspect, especially when you're starting to open your eyes to see, it is hard to digest the reality that someone is doing this to me on purpose, that they know what they're doing, that it's calculated, that it's not an accident. And when I'm able to digest that, then I can sit back and say, I have permission to walk out of this. I have permission that I get to not stay here and I don't deserve it. When we talk about why don't people leave, well, there's a gamut of reasons why people don't leave. And we are cruel when we don't understand the gamut of what it is to walk away, because it's not as easy as just picking up out and let me just go start a
Oh,
whole
black and
life.
white. Yeah.
It's not black and white. So without understanding, we can sometimes do more harm. Now, is it exhausting to be friends with someone who's in a dangerous situation and you're seeing it and you're like, I mean, it is
Yeah.
exhausting because you're like, how do I get them out of this? But what I realize is that not until the man or the woman has full clarity that they are in a very dangerous situation and they have permission to leave and they forgive themselves for staying, will they start making the plans to get out. And
I
that's
like
just
that.
a big part.
Permission to leave and forgiveness for staying. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how does a woman, and I mean, again, I imagine some women listening going, well, if these men are so good at grooming us, how, other than our own gut, which sometimes we can miss, you know, because we can be drawn to the wrong kind of person, we can actually get sort of, our gut can get kind of skewed, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are women out there going, well, how do I know if they're that good, if they're that skilled at grooming us and getting in our heads? How do we know until it's too late?
That's where the aspect of really pausing. And before you even start dating is to do work on your own intuition of trusting your gut. Is one of the things that
Yeah.
I really, really emphasize for parents to teach their children. We don't actually have to teach our children because we are born with an alert system. We are born with an alarm
Yeah.
that says this is not good. We start damaging that in childhood, right? We start telling our children that no, go kiss that relative. It's okay to be with them. That's your X, Y, and Z. Don't be afraid. And whatever's in them is telling them this person isn't safe for me, right? And they may turn around and end up loving that
Yes.
person, but you wanna honor that. You also wanna start training your kids when you're in situations outside of the home. Pay attention to that. Ask them when they're in the store to be alert, to be aware, and then say, "Did anyone make you feel nervous? Is this situation anything makes you say, 'Oh, wait, I gotta protect myself?'" Do that with your friends, like, right when they're all at your house. Did anyone make you feel unsafe when they go away to sleepovers or parties? You want them to hone into this intuition and you want it to be real and loud for them. Now, we do that with our children so that they don't have to go through as now adults that we fall into without having our intuition and our alarm system intact. I have to go back and get it intact. So I have to start looking at why when I'm in a dangerous situation, and women in particular, we can be alerted all the time because, you're in a world full of men, you're not that safe all the time because things happen. But it's you paying attention when you're just like at the store and you see somebody maybe too close to you or following you, that you pay attention to that and you call it what it is. This person is making me feel unsafe, right? When you're going out to put your groceries in the car, you're looking around, you see somebody, you don't shrug it off. You don't say, oh, no, they're going to be okay. You say, no, I'm feeling unsafe. Let me quickly move or let me bring somebody in. I used to tell my daughter when she was in college, don't be, embarrassed to call the security guy to walk you to your parking lot, right? We
Right.
sometimes don't want to call out for help because it's like, oh, I'm being dramatic. Oh, you're all these other things that we call women that are kind of hyper.
Yeah, we're
Right?
shutting down that inner voice, right? That built-in, as you said, that built-in alarm system. We're going, shut up. We are our own worst enemy in that way.
We are always enemy in that way. So
Yeah.
that's why when you're in these conversations, right? And I want people to talk. Like texting will never give you the information you need with someone you don't know. Texting is fine when you know the person, you know their language, you know how their tone is, you know when they're being sarcastic or that's fine. But when you don't know someone, texting will never give you the truth, right? Because you read text through your system, right? How you think, how you talk, how you feel, and you don't know what they're really saying. This is when we start relabeling, right? Like, oh no, it sounded rude, but no, they couldn't have been that. Let me call it something else. You got to get on the phone, right? You got to hear their tone. Tone is a huge part of communication,
Absolutely.
right? So you got to hear the tone. You
Facial expression, tone. Yeah.
facial expression. You
Yes.
you need body language to teach you who people are as well. Are they saying something and then looking away? And it's like, why are they looking away at that? Can they not give you good eye contact? And not that eye contact is everything, because we know with practice liars, they can do the whole eye contact thing and look like they're telling the truth with no problem, right? So
But
that's not
sometimes, I mean, part of my alarm system, is when a guy is too practiced, when a guy is too charming, when he has all the right answers. So I think part of our alarm system is if something seems too good to be true, maybe it is.
Mhm, mhm. And so it's you really saying, "I am the only one that can fully protect me." And you
Yeah.
step into that role
Yeah.
and you say, "I have to always be alert, aware." Listen, if you have to keep notes on your phone, I tell my daughter this, she's 23 and she's starting her dating career. I have notes that I send her. Put this in your phone. Keep a line of what the answers were so that you can go back and say, yeah, did they say that? Now that seems like you're taking kind of the fun out of dating and the romance and the whirlwind out of it. Yeah, I want to take some of it out of it because those instances when we're spinning, where again are not in a safe place to detect if maybe someone is not going to do me well, right? And then I start getting off guard. You have to stay on guard. You can be yourself, you can share parts of your life, but never share the most intimate parts of your life. Never go into, especially the beginning, all the things that the other guy did wrong and everything that you're giving them too much information. Let them earn it. Always see that your life story is precious and is valuable because it's you, right? People
They have to work to get it. They have to own it yours.
they have to earn parts of
It's funny. I just literally did a live Q&A in my private Facebook group about this very topic. It's so interesting to me that you and I are now talking about this. I want to say this to women because we're coming close to the end here, and there's so much more that you and I could talk about. Ladies, I can't impress upon you enough the importance of what Natalie is saying, and I really, really hope that you reach out to her and find out about her course on dangerous men, because I work with so many women as Natalie does that are deeply impacted, whether it started in childhood and we were exposed. I'll tell this story really quickly. Um, my my parents had an adult friend in our church, single man, and something you said today, Natalie, hit me in a certain way. He was grooming my parents. I never would have even thought that till you said it today. But he did. He groomed my parents to the point where they would let him take me and my 2 younger sisters, just him, out on outings. And God protected us. He never sexually abused us. The most that ever happened was he would sit us in his lap and then tickle us. So, he was arousing himself that way. But there was one occasion where my parents let him take us to another church family's house for an overnight visit, and he had me change into my bathing suit in front of him, and my sisters, not me, interestingly enough, I was probably maybe about 10 or 11 when this happened. My sisters were so disturbed by it that they went back and told my parents. And that sort of shut down all the outings with this guy. But, years go by, I go off to college, and he is sending me every month, he's sending me the church calendar. He's not writing me, he's not trying to talk to me, but he's sending me the church calendar. He's highlighting different activities. He actually worked for our church. Um, and when I came back for the summer, he wanted to take me out to dinner. Now he's my parent, he's probably in his 40s. I'm 18. And there just was this inside of me, like, j you know, I had this very active, as you say, like, intuitive sort of alarm system, and there just was a part of me, I didn't have any real reason to feel this way, like, tangible reason, but I just felt icky about it. And I said no. And my parents were sort of pressuring me a little bit because they were still friends with him. You know, they stopped letting him take my sisters and I were we were young, but now I'm an adult, so to speak, and
Right.
he's inviting me out for dinner. He's just being nice, Debbie. Well, I said no. That so all was said and done there. Well, we found out, I don't know, I can't remember now if it was months or maybe even like a year later, that he had gone on from my sisters to other children in our church and had been sexually abusing them. And when it all came out, there were hundreds of cases of children that he had been a sexual predator, towards, and it was shocking to me, but it made me relive the whole, like, what could have potentially happened to me that night if I had gone to dinner with him, and I'm so grateful that God gave me just that whatever you wanna call it, that gut feeling, that alarm system, that inner voice inside of me that said, "No, this doesn't feel right." But yeah, to realize that's exactly what he did is he groomed my parents. So women, I'm talking a lot, and this is my monologue now. Uh, what Natalie is saying is so, so critical because it starts when we're young and we learn to shut that voice down because we have a parent or parents who don't believe us, or we think they're not going to believe us, or, the predator has made a threat, or or nothing's happened to us as a child, but we go into a teenage relationship when we don't have the emotional maturity to understand these things. And somehow, some way, that internal alarm system gets warped and we begin to blame ourselves for the things that happen in our relationships. We begin to minimize those things. We think it's not so bad. We listen to the gaslighting, the deliberate intent to create a false reality in order to manipulate us. And there are men out there who are doing that even if they are not beating the living daylights out of us. So, Natalie, I have to have you back because there's so much more here that, you need to share with women, but this gets us started. So women, please, I'm gonna put Natalie's information in the description of today's episode. Please reach out to Natalie if you have any sort of history of being with a man that again was dangerous to your well-being. He may never have laid a hand on you, but he was dangerous and toxic to your own sense of self, your own mental, emotional, and spiritual health, because there are signs and indications both within men and within yourself that you need to be deeply aware of so that this doesn't get repeated. Natalie, is there any word are there any words of wisdom that you wanna leave women with? Um, because we have to wrap up, unfortunately.
Yes, I will say this. With intuition, don't wait for facts. Sometimes we feel it and we're holding off and we're trying to see will it come to fruition. If your intuition tells you, at least be super cautious that this could be you're in a dangerous situation. Facts sometimes are when we are fully harmed, and you don't have to wait for a fact to trust your own intuition. The other thing that I will leave you with, and I tell all the women this in my course, is to use um, three traits for you to be able to say, I should walk away. And this is in the beginning. So it's one lie, one broken promise we can kind of excuse because things happen and sometimes people are dishonest. Two lies and two broken promises is where you have to be super alert because that's telling you this may be a pattern. If it's three lies and three broken promises, that is indication to you this is who this person is because there's no reason why you should already be at three and you guys just started. So if you are in this space and these three things are happening and we have limited or under devalued lying because people lie all the time, right? And we don't see it at the offense that it is. But if you could see lying as taking choice from you, then you realize that lies are very dangerous. So if someone's lying to you and you catch them, be alerted because that's the first steps that are going to lead you into a dangerous space. As you said, Debbie, we have to protect ourselves. We have to be in tune to our own intuition. We have to know that there are people out there that are not good people, and all of us know some. And so, because of that, we have to educate ourselves. We have to push, right, to get this information to as many people as possible because we can live better lives. We can never erase danger, right? Because those people will always be out there, but we can put some shields on to try to protect ourselves better. Thank you for having me. This was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Natalie. I just can't impress the importance of what you're having to say on women because this is so prevalent in our society, unfortunately. You know what? We're gonna have to have you back and talk about dangerous women because we put a lot of emphasis on men and what men do wrong, but you're right when you say at the beginning, there are women out there, and I even though my audience is predominantly women, I want women to recognize that they may have some traits within themselves that are toxic to a potential relationship with men. So that's part B. That's where we're going to have Natalie back and we're going to talk about that. Natalie, thank you so much for being with me today. As soon as we end this, I'm going to get you right back on the schedule so we can have that part B because I think that's critical for women to hear. And ladies, that's it for today. I will see you on next week's episode.